The Zarkurians were a terrifying alien race. With their massive ships and advanced weapons, they had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Each planet they visited fell to their might, its people forced into submission. There was no race that had ever stood against them for long. And now, they had their eyes on Earth. When the Zarkurian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they brought with them destruction and chaos. Giant, black ships hovered over cities, raining down terrifying blasts of energy. The world was thrown into panic. Governments tried to organize a defense, but no weapons could match the Zarkurian technology. It was clear humanity was outmatched. The Zarkurians thought little of humans. To them, Earth was just another planet to conquer, and humans were weak, primitive creatures with no hope of resistance. They had encountered many species before, and none had proved difficult to subdue. Why should Earth be any different? The Zarkurians made their first move by landing in a remote area of the planet. They didn't expect much of a challenge, and so, their forces weren't even prepared for the unexpected. It was during this initial invasion that they made a grave mistake. In the chaos of the assault, a small group of human soldiers, led by Alex Turner, fought to hold their ground. Alex was no ordinary soldier. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he was one of the sharpest minds the military had. He had served in the toughest units, outsmarting enemies and surviving impossible situations. When the Zarkurians attacked, Alex and his team fought back, using guerrilla tactics and tricks they had learned from years of combat experience. Alex wasn't just skilled, he was resourceful. He had learned how to use the environment to his advantage, to think 2 steps ahead of the enemy, and to keep his cool even under fire. It was these very qualities that made him stand out in the heat of battle. On the second day of the invasion, during a fierce firefight, Alex and his team were captured. It wasn't by force or sheer power, it was the result of a well-laid trap. Alex had been lured into an ambush, and his team was quickly surrounded. The Zarkurians, seeing a chance to capture a human alive for study, seized him without hesitation. First. They didn't think much of Alex. To them, humans were a dime a dozen. They took him aboard their ship, prepared to imprison him just as they had done to other species they had conquered. They thought they would break him, extract information about Earth's defenses, and send him off to a life of captivity. But the Zarkurians were wrong. Alex wasn't like the others they had captured before. He was different. In the Zarkurian ship, they threw him into a dark cell, expecting him to cower or beg for mercy. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Alex's mind worked faster than they could anticipate. As he sat in his cell, his eyes studied every corner, every detail of his surrounding. The Zarkurians believed he was just another prisoner, but Alex saw opportunity where others saw hopelessness. He knew that they would try to break him. That was part of their plan. But what the Zarkurians didn't realize was that Alex wasn't afraid of them. He had seen worse, faced enemies who were just as powerful, and he had always found a way out. Alex had no intention of remaining a captive. He would escape. He would fight back. The Zarkurians, meanwhile, believed their control over him was absolute. They began their experiments, probing his mind, analyzing his reactions. They tried to force him to reveal any weaknesses in human defense strategies, hoping to gain an upper hand on Earth. They didn't understand that Alex had no intention of revealing anything. His silence was not out of fear, but out of calculation. Every day, they came in, expecting to wear him down, to get him to talk. But Alex only became more determined. The more they tested him, the more he learned about their technology, their ways, and their vulnerabilities. He began to understand how their systems worked. It was a dangerous game, but Alex was playing it perfectly. Meanwhile, the Zarkurians continued their invasion, confident that their enemies were weak and would eventually crumble. But they had no idea that their greatest mistake was the capture of one human. They thought they had captured a prisoner, but in reality, they had captured their greatest fear. It didn't take long for Alex to begin plotting his escape. He knew that the Zarkurians were not invincible. They were a mighty force, yes, but they were not without their flaws. And Alex, with his quick thinking and deep understanding of tactics, was beginning to see cracks in their armor. The Zarkurians had underestimated humans. They had never considered the possibility that a single human could outsmart them. They believed that once a human was captured, that was the end of the story. They were wrong. Alex Turner, the first human they ever captured, was about to become their worst nightmare. Alex Turner had been locked in the Zarkorian prison for what felt like an eternity. The once confident invaders now saw him as little more than an experiment. They had him in a cold metal cell, surrounded by advanced alien technology that hummed and buzzed, watching his every move. But what they didn't know was that their experiments were not breaking him. They were only making him more dangerous. Every day, the Zarkorians would come into his cell, scanning him with their high-tech devices, trying to find out what made humans tick. They were obsessed with understanding his body, his mind, his resilience. They used needles, energy fields, and strange machines to probe his physical and mental limits. They were convinced that if they could learn the secrets of human strength, they could conquer not just Earth, but every other race in the galaxy. But Alex was no ordinary human. He'd faced enemies more terrifying than these aliens. He had endured unimaginable pain. But there was one thing the Zarkorians didn't understand. Alex's mind was as strong as his body. Every experiment they performed on him, every shock of pain they delivered, only made him think harder, faster, and more carefully. Instead of breaking him, they were helping him. Alex had been studying their technology the entire time. He wasn't just sitting there, passively waiting for someone to rescue him. No, he was watching, listening, learning. The Zarkorians thought he was simply a prisoner. They didn't know that every device, every weapon, every system in their ship was an opportunity for Alex. He knew that if he could just find a way to use their technology, he could escape. The first chance came when the Zarkorians left him alone for a few hours. The usual guards were replaced by unfamiliar ones, and Alex's cell was slightly less guarded than before. Alex knew this was the moment. He'd been waiting for this opening, and now, with his heart racing, he quickly got to work. The Zarkorian technology was advanced, but it wasn't perfect. Alex had already figured out their security systems, their energy grids, and even the controls to his own restraints. They had used their high-tech devices on him so many times. Alex had become familiar with the patterns, the rhythms of their operations. He didn't waste a second. Using the skills he had learned as a soldier, he reached for the exposed wires behind a panel in the wall of his cell. His hands were steady, his mind focused. This wasn't just about escaping. This was about turning the tide in his favor. He connected the wires to short-circuit the power to the security systems. The lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. It was enough. The Zarkorian guards outside his cell began to panic, scrambling to figure out what was going wrong. They didn't realize that Alex had already hacked into their main control systems. They thought the power failure was just a glitch. It wasn't. With a grin, Alex deactivated the electronic locks on his cell and slipped out. The Zarkorians were still trying to regain control of the ship's systems, giving him all the time he needed. He knew exactly where he needed to go. Alex moved through the corridors of the alien ship, his mind racing with thoughts of escape. He avoided the Zarkorian guards with ease, using the knowledge he had gained during his time as their prisoner. He knew where the weapons were stored, where the guard patrols were weakest, and where the ship's command center was. But his goal wasn't just to escape, he needed to cause as much chaos as possible. He reached the weapons bay and immediately began sabotaging their system. The Zarkorians had never imagined that a human, a prisoner, could have access to their own weaponry. Alex, however, knew exactly how to turn their advanced tech against them. He rigged their energy cannons to overload, setting traps in their power grids that would cause explosions in key areas of the ship. He wasn't just escaping, he was making sure the Zarkorians would never have the upper hand again. As alarms blared, and the ship shook with the force of Alex's sabotage. The Zarkorians began to realize that they were under attack. They had thought they were in control, that a simple human prisoner would be no match for their might. But Alex wasn't just a prisoner. He was a force to be reckoned with. And now, he was showing them just how dangerous a single human could be. The Zarkorian leaders scrambled to figure out how to stop him, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Their ship was now in chaos. Systems were failing, explosions rocked the corridors, and their soldiers were panicking. They could no longer track Alex. He had become a shadow in their midst, using their own power against them, turning their own ship into a deadly trap. As Alex made his way to the escape pods, he knew this was just the beginning. His escape was only a small part of the bigger picture. The Zarkorians had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay for it. He had learned their ways, understood their weaknesses, and turned their technology into his weapon. When Alex finally reached the escape pods and launched himself into space, he didn't look back. He knew the Zarkorians would never forget the human they had captured and tortured. They had thought him weak. They had thought him powerless. But Alex Turner, the first human they captured, had just become their greatest threat. When Alex Turner escaped the Zarkorian ship, he didn't just flee to safety, he sparked something far bigger. The humans trapped in the Zarkorian prison had been broken, scared, and defeated. But Alex's escape was a signal to them all. If one human could break free, maybe they could too. And if one human could fight back, maybe they all could. Alex didn't waste time running away or hiding. He had seen what the Zarkorians were capable of, and he knew the galaxy wouldn't be safe if he just went into hiding. There were hundreds of humans still imprisoned, and Alex knew they could fight back. They just needed someone to show them how. So, he did what no one expected. He became the leader of the rebellion. The first step was to find the other prisoners. Alex had no idea how many humans were held on the ship, but he had to try. He moved quickly, avoiding Zarkorian patrols until he found the holding areas. Inside, the humans were living in cramped cells, weak from months of captivity. They were afraid, tired, and lost. But Alex didn't let that stop him. He started talking to them, sharing his plan. "Listen," Alex said, his voice low but firm. "We can escape and we can fight back. The Zarkorians think we're weak. They think they can control us. But they're wrong. I've already shown them that. Now, it's your turn." At first, most of the prisoners were hesitant. Some didn't believe it was possible. Others were too scared to even try. But Alex's confidence and determination were infectious. Slowly, the humans began to listen, then began to believe. With Alex's guidance, they started to form a plan. Alex had spent enough time studying the Zarkorian technology to understand how their systems worked. He had learned the ins and outs of their weapons, their communication systems, and even their security protocols. He knew how to turn their technology against them. And now, he was going to teach the humans how to do the same. Alex began training the prisoners in basic tactics, using the limited resources they had available. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and they had their minds. Alex taught them how to move quietly, how to use their environment to their advantage, and how to fight without being seen. He showed them how to hack into the Zarkorian systems, how to disable their weapons, and how to sabotage the ship's power systems. As the days passed, the humans grew stronger, more confident. They were no longer prisoners, they were fighters. And they had Alex to thank for that. The Zarkorians, on the other hand, had no idea what was happening. They were too busy celebrating their supposed victory to realize they were about to lose everything. The first time a group of human prisoners broke into a weapons storage room, stealing Zarkorian guns and energy blades, the aliens were stunned. How could this be happening? They had always controlled everything until now. Alex and his new army of rebels had begun to take control. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about sending a message. The humans were no longer passive victims, they were active fighters. They were challenging the Zarkorians at every turn, sabotaging their ships, attacking their soldiers, and slowly but surely pushing the invaders back. Every small victory fueled their confidence, and Alex's leadership turned them into a united force. Word spread quickly. The humans on the ship saw what Alex had done, and more began to join the rebellion. It wasn't long before the Zarkorians began to realize they had underestimated their enemy. They had thought humans were weak, easy to control, but now they were facing an uprising they couldn't stop. Alex, now a symbol of defiance and hope, led the charge. With his intelligence and creativity, he developed new strategies that the Zarkorians couldn't anticipate. He didn't just fight the invaders head-on, he used their own technology against them. He turned their energy weapons into traps, their ship security systems into their downfall. Every time the Zarkorians thought they had the upper hand, Alex found a way to turn the tables. The Zarkorians, once so confident in their victory, began to fear him. They had underestimated humans, and now they were paying the price. Their ships were in disarray, their soldiers scattered, and their control over the ship slipping away. They had thought one human was no threat, but Alex had shown them that humans, when united, were a force to be reckoned with. The human rebellion grew stronger by the day. The prisoners weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for their freedom, for Earth, and for the future. They had a leader they believed in, someone who had shown them that they could win. And under Alex's leadership, they were determined to take the fight to the Zarkorians. The Zarkorians, who had once thought Earth would fall with ease, now found themselves fighting a war they could never have imagined. The humans had become more than just an obstacle, they had become a serious threat. And at the center of it all stood Alex Turner, the man who had turned the tide, the man who had transformed from a captive to the leader of a revolution. The Zarkorians had a problem. They had created their worst nightmare, and they had no idea how to stop it. The war between humans and the Zarkorians had raged for months. What began as a single, isolated battle had grown into a full-scale conflict. Under the leadership of Alex Turner, humanity had risen from the ashes of defeat. What had once seemed like an impossible fight had become a real chance for victory. The Zarkorians, once so sure of their domination, now found themselves losing ground. But the war wasn't over. The Zarkorians still had their most powerful weapon, Lord Karath, the ruthless leader who commanded the fleet. It was his brutal tactics that had crushed entire worlds before, and he was determined to finish what they had started on Earth. But there was one thing Karath hadn't counted on. Alex Turner, the first human they had captured, had become the rallying force for the rebellion. Alex had already led countless successful strikes against the Zarkorian forces, using their own technology against them, and training humans to fight back in ways the invaders had never expected. Now, the time had come for the final battle. Alex had a plan: one last assault on Lord Karath himself. If they could take down Karath, they could cripple the Zarkorian forces and break their grip on Earth forever. The final battle was set. Alex and his team had gathered their forces. The rebels now, more than just prisoners, they were soldiers, ready to face their enemies. They knew this would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. They were going up against Karath's personal army, a fleet of elite Zarkorian warriors who had never lost a fight. But Alex wasn't afraid. He had fought worse, and he had learned from every battle. This time, they would win. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Alex would lead a small team to infiltrate the heart of Karath's command ship, while the rest of the rebels distracted the Zarkorians in space. The distraction would keep the Zarkorians focused on a false front, while Alex and his team snuck aboard. Their target was clear: Lord Karath himself. If they could defeat him, the Zarkorians would lose their leader, and their unity would fall apart. As Alex and his team boarded the enemy ship, the atmosphere was tense. The ship was massive, its dark metal walls filled with Zarkorian soldiers who moved like shadows. Every step Alex took, he was aware of the danger surrounding him. But he didn't hesitate. He had fought this battle before in his mind. This was just another mission. He and his team moved quickly and silently, avoiding the Zarkorian patrols and cutting through the ship's defenses. They were getting closer to Karath's command center, but the closer they got, the more dangerous it became. Zarkorian soldiers began to realize something was wrong. Alarms blared through the halls, signaling that intruders had been detected. But Alex had already anticipated this. He had planned for this moment, and he knew what to do. The final confrontation came quickly. Alex and his team reached the command center, and there he was, Lord Karath, standing tall and imposing, his armor gleaming in the dim light. The Zarkorian leader sneered when he saw Alex. "So, the little human thinks he can defeat me," Karath growled, his voice filled with contempt. "You are nothing. Just a prisoner who got lucky." But Alex didn't flinch. He had heard those words before. He had been called weak, powerless, and insignificant. But Alex knew who he was. He wasn't just a prisoner. He wasn't just a survivor. He was the one who had led humanity's fight, and now he would be the one to end this war. "You underestimate humanity," Alex said calmly, his voice steady. "You've already lost." The battle that followed was intense. Korath was a skilled fighter, his Zarkorian strength and speed unmatched by any human. But Alex was smart. He used the environment to his advantage, outmaneuvering Korath's attacks and finding weak points in his defense. Alex's mind raced, analyzing every move, every attack. This wasn't just about strength, it was about outsmarting the enemy. For every blow Korath landed, Alex had a counter. For every strike, Alex found a way to gain ground. It was a fight of strategy, skill, and sheer willpower. Korath was relentless, but Alex's determination was stronger. Finally, with one last move, Alex used the very Zarkorian technology Korath had trusted so much against him. In a swift motion, Alex disabled Korath's armor, leaving the Zarkorian leader vulnerable. With a final, well-placed strike, Alex brought Korath to his knees. The warlord fell, defeated. It was over. The Zarkorian forces, leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. Without Korath to command them, the Zarkorians were no longer the unified, unstoppable force they had once been. They scattered, their hold on Earth broken. The humans had won. Alex stood over the fallen Korath, breathing heavily, his mind racing. It was hard to believe that the battle was finally over. He had led the charge, had taken down the Zarkorian leader, and had broken their grip on Earth. But Alex knew that this victory wasn't just about him. It was about the entire human race. It was a victory for every human who had fought. The Zarkorians had underestimated humanity from the beginning. They had thought that capturing one human would be enough to crush the Earth's resistance. But in the end, that very human, Alex Turner, had become the key to their downfall. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. With his bravery, intelligence, and determination, Alex had turned the tide and led humanity to victory. And now, as he stood victorious on the battlefield, Alex Turner had become more than just a hero. He had become a symbol proof that even the most unlikely of humans could change the course of history. The Zarkorians would never forget the human they had captured, the one they had underestimated. They had created their own worst nightmare,